In a modest kitchen filled with the aroma of simmering vegetables and the faintest hint of baking bread, 12-year-old Emma stood on her tiptoes, scrubbing the counter with a worn sponge. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. But even the light seemed to shy away from her presence. She felt like a ghost in her own home, floating between shadows, unseen and unheard. While her adoptive siblings, Mia and Ryan, laughed and played in the living room, Emma was left to tend to the chores that never seemed to end. "Hey, Emma, come play with us," Mia called, her voice filled with the carefree joy of childhood. She tossed a plush toy toward Emma, who instinctively ducked to avoid it. Though the gesture was meant to be kind, Emma felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Instead of joining them, she lowered her gaze, focusing on the stubborn grime on the counter, as if it were her only companion. "Why would she want to play with us?" Ryan chimed in, a smirk playing on his lips. "She's too busy being our maid." The laughter that followed cut through Emma like a knife, and she felt the weight of their disdain settle heavily on her shoulders. She forced a smile, but it felt hollow, a mask she had long learned to wear. As they continued to giggle and tease, Emma's heart ached with a familiar pang of loneliness. She longed to be part of their world, to feel the warmth of acceptance, but every day felt like an insurmountable wall separating her from the life she wished for. Instead, she was reduced to a duty, a burden they had to tolerate. With each dish she washed and every floor she scrubbed, the feeling of invisibility deepened, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. That night, as the house settled into a quiet stillness, Emma found herself unable to sleep. The echoes of her siblings' laughter haunted her thoughts, mingling with the whispers of her own insecurities. She lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling, where shadows danced in the flickering light of the street lamp outside. It was during these quiet moments that her mind wandered to a place where she could be free, a world where she was not merely tolerated but cherished. Emma had grown accustomed to her adoptive parents' indifference, but nothing could prepare her for what she would overhear that evening. Curiosity pulled her from her bed, and she crept down the hallway, guided by the faint murmurs that seeped through the closed door of the living room. "Honestly, I don't know why we took her in," Emma's adoptive mother said, her voice laced with annoyance. "She's more trouble than she's worth. Just look at her. She's practically a house elf, right? It's like having an extra piece of furniture." Her father chimed in, his tone dismissive. "She should be grateful we even let her stay here. We're doing her a favor." Emma felt her heart drop like a stone. The words pierced her, each one a reminder that she was seen as an obligation, not a daughter. The warmth of her dreams faded, replaced by a cold realization of her reality. She pressed her back against the wall, breath caught in her throat, fighting the urge to cry. But deep within her, a flicker of determination ignited. One day, she vowed silently, she would prove them wrong. She would show them that she was worth more than their scorn. The following days blurred into one another as Emma navigated her life under the weight of her adoptive family's disdain. Yet, amidst the sadness, something began to change. During her routine visit to the local park, she found herself drawn to a boy with tousled hair and an easy smile. Jake was a few years older, a boy from a wealthy family who often played soccer with his friends. Emma had watched him from afar, captivated by the way he moved with confidence and joy. One afternoon, while sitting alone on a park bench, Emma spotted Jake kicking a soccer ball with his friends. He laughed, his voice ringing out like music, and for a moment, she felt a longing to be part of that laughter, to join him in his carefree world. Gathering her courage, she stood and approached the group, unsure of her footing. Can I play?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake paused, glancing at her with a curious expression. "Sure, we could use another player," he said, his smile warm and inviting. The other boys nodded, and Emma felt a rush of excitement flood her chest. For the first time, she was not invisible. She was seen. As they played, Emma felt the heaviness of her home life lift, if only for a moment. The thrill of running, the laughter shared, and the fleeting sense of belonging filled her with joy. Jake treated her as an equal, and in those stolen moments, she dared to believe she could be more than a shadow. They played until the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park. "Hey, you're really good," Jake exclaimed, panting slightly as he wiped the sweat from his brow. "What's your name?" "Emma," she replied, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and happiness. "What's yours?" "Jake," he said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Emma." In that simple exchange, something shifted within her. For the first time, Emma felt a sense of connection, a spark of hope igniting in her heart. They began to meet regularly, sharing stolen moments amidst the laughter and youthful exuberance of the park. Jake became her escape, a beacon of light that cut through the darkness of her home life. Emma found herself confiding in him, sharing her dreams and fears, even the pain of being an outsider in her own family. Jake listened intently, his blue eyes filled with understanding. "You're stronger than you think, Emma. One day, you'll find a way to break free," he assured her, his words wrapping around her like a warm blanket. With each passing day, their bond deepened, and Emma felt the stirrings of love begin to blossom in her heart. In Jake, she found not just a friend, but a confidant, a partner who saw her for who she truly was. She cherished their moments together, knowing that they were fleeting, but they fueled her resolve to find her place in the world. As the days turned into weeks, Emma's heart swelled with the kind of hope she had never known. But even in the midst of this newfound joy, the shadows of her home loomed large. Emma knew she could not escape the cruel reality of her adoptive family's treatment forever. Yet, with Jake by her side, she began to believe that perhaps one day she would find the strength to confront them, to carve out a future where she could finally be free. Emma's heart raced as the echoes of laughter and clinking glasses permeated the air. The grand hall of her adoptive family's home was filled with guests, each more affluent and entitled than the last. She stood in the corner, her hands trembling as she clutched a dish towel, her eyes darting between the vibrant faces of her siblings and the disapproving glares of her adoptive parents. The opulence around her only served to amplify her feelings of worthlessness. "Emma, come here." Her adoptive mother's voice cut through the din like a knife, sharp and commanding. With a heavy heart, Emma approached. Her mother, dressed in a shimmering gown, was the epitome of elegance, while Emma felt like a ragged doll in her simple dress, worn and patched from years of neglect. "Fill the guests' glasses," her mother instructed, gesturing dismissively toward a table stacked with expensive wine bottles. "Of course, Mother," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As she moved to the table, she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She poured the wine carefully, her mind drifting to thoughts of Jake, the boy who had once filled her heart with joy and hope. In the midst of her bleak reality, he was her light, her promise of a better future. Emma. A sharp voice interrupted her thoughts. It was her brother, Dylan. A smug grin plastered across his face as he and his friends gathered around her. Look at you, pouring wine like a servant. It's almost pathetic. Leave her alone, Dylan, came the voice of her older sister, Claire, though her tone lacked sincerity. It's not her fault she was adopted. She should be grateful she even has a place here. The laughter that followed was a cruel symphony, and Emma felt the blood drain from her face. She forced a smile, trying to mask the hurt that tightened around her chest. I am grateful, she lied, her voice barely audible over the mocking jeers. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly raucous. Emma was summoned again and again, each task more demeaning than the last. She served appetizers, cleared plates, and filled drinks, her heart aching with each passing moment. Just as she thought she might escape to the solitude of her room, the worst came to pass. Emma, her father boomed, his voice slurred from too much drink. Get over here. With a heavy heart, Emma approached, only to realize that her family had concocted a cruel game. They were entertaining their guests with humiliating tales of her childhood, each story more twisted and exaggerated than the last. She stood there, frozen, as they recounted the time she had stumbled or failed to meet their impossible expectations. Remember the time she tried to bake a cake? Dylan laughed, and the crowd joined in. It was a disaster. It looked like something a dog dragged in. Or how she thought she could sing. Claire chimed in, her eyes glinting with malice. She must have scared away every bird in the neighborhood. Laughter erupted again, and Emma felt herself retreating further into the shadows, wishing she could disappear entirely. The humiliation burned in her cheeks, and she could feel the tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She desperately fought to hold them back, to maintain some semblance of dignity. But as the stories escalated, her father, emboldened by alcohol and the laughter of his guests, decided to take the humiliation a step further. Let's have some fun with our little servant, he bellowed, his eyes glinting with a cruel spark. Before she could react, Emma found herself seized by the arms by her brothers, who dragged her toward a chair in the center of the living room. The guests erupted in laughter, egging them on. Let's tie her up and make her our entertainment for the night, one of the guests shouted, and the room exploded with approval. Please no, Emma pleaded, her voice rising in panic, but her cries fell on deaf ears. They bound her wrists with a thin rope, laughing as they secured her to the chair. The humiliation crashed over her like a tidal wave, drowning her in despair. Look at her, Dylan taunted, standing over her with a triumphant grin. Our little plaything. The laughter continued, the sound ringing mockingly in her ears as her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Emma's mind raced, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Memories of Jake flooded her mind, his warm smile, the way he made her feel seen and cherished. In that moment, she clung to those memories as her lifeline, something to hold on to in the midst of her turmoil. Stop, she cried, her voice rising in defiance, but it was lost in the cacophony of mocking laughter. She felt a surge of anger rise within her, a fire igniting in her chest. This couldn't be her life. She couldn't allow them to reduce her to nothing. As she sat there, bound and humiliated, a flicker of resolve began to ignite within her. I will escape this, she vowed silently, her heart pounding with determination. I'll find a way to break free from this nightmare. She closed her eyes, picturing Jake, the way he looked at her, the way he believed in her when no one else did. Emma remembered the last time they had been together, laughing under the stars, sharing dreams of a future where they could be free. In that moment, she felt the warmth of his love wrap around her like a blanket, shielding her from the cruelty surrounding her. Emma, her father barked, snapping her back to the present. You're supposed to entertain us. Dance. With a surge of indignation, Emma shook her head defiantly. I won't, she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The laughter faltered, surprise flickering across the faces of her adoptive family and their guests. Who does she think she is? Claire whispered, her tone dripping with disdain. Let her go. She's just ruining the fun. Another guest chimed in, but Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they were starting to see her as more than a servant, more than a plaything. But her father's anger flared, and he stepped closer, his face twisted in fury. You think you can defy me? You're nothing without this family. You should be grateful we even let you stay here. At that moment, something within Emma snapped. She could no longer tolerate the humiliation, the demeaning treatment. You're right. I am nothing to you, she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. But I will not be your puppet any longer. As the guests stared in shock, Emma felt a surge of determination. She would not let them break her spirit. With all her strength, she began to wriggle against the ropes binding her wrists, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. The laughter that once filled the room now felt like a distant echo, drowned out by her resolve. In the chaos of the moment, she felt the ropes loosen slightly. With renewed vigor, she twisted her wrists, forcing the bindings to slip. Just as she felt the final strand give way, her father hurled an insult at her, but she didn't listen. She was free. Without a second thought, Emma bolted from the chair, her heart racing as she dashed toward the nearest exit. She could hear the gasps and shouts behind her, but she didn't look back. All that mattered was getting out, escaping the suffocating atmosphere that had held her captive for so long. Bursting through the door, Emma felt the cool night air hit her like a wave of liberation. She ran, her feet pounding against the ground, fueled by adrenaline and the desperate need for freedom. With every step, she felt the chains of her past beginning to fade. As she sprinted through the darkness, thoughts of Jake filled her mind. She had to find him. He was her only hope. He had always believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. She could almost hear his voice, soft and reassuring, urging her to keep going. Emma, she whispered to herself, determination fueling her stride. You can do this. With every step she took, she felt stronger. She would no longer be the invisible servant in her own life. Emma would reclaim her story, and with Jake by her side, she would finally find the love and strength to overcome her past. In the dimly lit office of his high-rise building, Jake sat behind an expansive mahogany desk, the city skyline stretching out behind him like a tapestry of lights. He rubbed his temples, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. The news of Emma's suffering had hit him like a ton of bricks, igniting a fierce determination within him. He had long admired her strength, but the depths of her struggles ignited a fierce protectiveness. Damn them, he muttered under his breath, the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Emma. "I'm scared, Jake. I don't know what to do." His heart ached at the words. He quickly typed back, his fingers flying over the screen. "You're not alone, Emma. We'll figure this out together. I promise." Just then, the door opened, and his trusted assistant, Mia, stepped in. "Jake, we need to talk about the upcoming project launch," she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. She had seen the toll that Emma's situation was taking on him. "I know," Jake replied, his gaze still fixed on the city below. "But right now, I need to focus on something else." "What's going on?" Mia asked, her brow furrowing. "You've been distracted." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. He leaned back in his chair, finally meeting her gaze. "It's Emma. She's been living in a nightmare, and I'm going to help her." Mia's expression softened as she realized the depth of his feelings for Emma. "What do you plan to do?" "We're getting married," he declared, the words spilling out with conviction. "In secret. I want to give her the strength to confront her past." Mia's eyes widened. "Jake, that's a big step. Are you sure she's ready for that?" "I don't care," he replied firmly. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect her. She deserves a chance to reclaim her life." As the conversation unfolded, Jake's mind raced with possibilities. He envisioned a future where Emma felt safe, where she could transcend the shadows that had haunted her for so long. He could almost see her smile, the way it lit up her entire face, and it fueled his determination even more. Meanwhile, Emma stood in front of the mirror in her modest apartment, adjusting her dress for their secret wedding. The soft fabric clung to her figure, a stark contrast to the rough edges of her past. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety knotting in her stomach. This was a new chapter, a leap of faith into the unknown. "What if they find out?" she whispered to her reflection, her heart racing. The shadows of doubt crept in, but the thought of Jake's unwavering support pushed them away. He believed in her when no one else did, and that belief was a lifeline. Suddenly, her phone pinged with a message. It was from Jake. "Meet me at the park in 30 minutes. I have a surprise." A rush of adrenaline surged through her. She took a deep breath, smoothing down her dress one last time before stepping out into the cool evening air. The park was a place filled with memories, a sanctuary where they had shared laughter and dreams as children. As she arrived, the soft glow of fairy lights illuminated the path. She spotted Jake standing by a small, elegantly set table. A bouquet of wildflowers sat at the center, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the muted tones of her past. He turned at the sound of her approach, his face breaking into a warm smile that made her heart flutter. "You look beautiful," he said, his gaze filled with admiration. "Thank you," Emma replied, her cheeks flushing. "What's all this?" "Just a little something to celebrate us," he said, gesturing to the table. "I wanted to make this moment special." "It's perfect," she breathed, stepping closer. The air was thick with unspoken words and promises, and she felt herself drawn into his orbit. Jake reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Emma, I know the past has been cruel, but today marks the beginning of something new. I want to marry you, right here, right now." Her heart raced at his words. "Are you sure?" "What if?" "No what ifs," he interrupted gently. "This is about us. Let's not let fear dictate our choices anymore. We deserve this." With a determined nod, Emma felt a surge of courage flooding her veins. "Yes, I want to marry you." They exchanged vows beneath the flickering lights, their words simple yet profound. As they sealed their promises with a kiss, the weight of the world began to lift. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt free. After the ceremony, they shared a quiet dinner, savoring the intimacy of the moment. Jake looked deep into her eyes, searching for the words that would reassure her. "This is just the beginning, Emma. You have every right to chase your dreams. I want you to work in my company, to show the world what you're capable of." Her heart swelled at his encouragement. "I've always wanted to prove that I'm more than what they made me believe." "And you will," Jake assured her. "You're strong. I'll be right by your side." Days turned into weeks as Emma started her new job at Jake's company. She approached each task with fervor, determined to carve out her identity beyond the shadows of her adoptive family. Her co-workers were initially surprised by her presence, but Emma quickly earned their respect with her unwavering dedication and innovative ideas. In the break room one afternoon, she overheard snippets of conversation that made her stomach churn. "Did you hear about the new hire? She's from that family," one colleague whispered, her tone dripping with judgment. "Yeah, I heard they're not exactly the finest people," another chimed in. Emma's heart sank, but she took a deep breath, reminding herself of Jake's words. She was no longer defined by her past. She was forging her own path. With each passing day, she grew more confident, but the shadows of her upbringing lingered, a constant reminder of the pain she had endured. Still, she pushed forward, driven by the desire to prove not just to others, but to herself, that she was worthy of love and success. Meanwhile, Jake was hard at work, gathering evidence of the mistreatment Emma had faced at the hands of her adoptive family. He met with private investigators and combed through documents, piecing together a narrative that would expose the truth. One evening, he sat at his desk, surrounded by files and photographs, a fierce determination in his eyes. Mia walked in, carrying a stack of papers. "You're still at it?" she asked, a mixture of admiration and concern in her voice. "I can't stop until I have everything," Jake replied, his jaw set. "Emma deserves to confront her past, and I won't let her down." Mia nodded, her respect for him deepening. "Just be careful, Jake. You're playing a dangerous game." "I know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But this isn't just about business. It's personal. I won't rest until she's free from the chains of her past." As the sun set over the city, Jake's resolve only deepened. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with Emma by his side, he felt unstoppable. Together, they would rewrite their story, transforming pain into power and reclaiming the love they had fought so hard to find. Emma sat at her desk in Jake's office, sunlight streaming through the large windows, illuminating the room with warmth. The walls were adorned with modern art, a stark contrast to the cold, oppressive environment she had grown up in. It was a space filled with success, ambition, and possibility, everything that had been denied to her in her childhood home. With each passing day, her confidence grew, bolstered by her new role within Jake's company. She was no longer the invisible girl scrubbing floors. She was a valued employee, contributing ideas that were being heard and respected. "Emma, do you have a minute?" Jake's voice broke her concentration. She looked up, her heart racing at the sight of him. He stood at the doorway, his tall frame exuding a sense of purpose. "Of course, come in," she replied, trying to sound casual despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. Jake entered, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to check in on how you're feeling about the project. I know it's a big step for you." Emma nodded, a small smile creeping onto her face. I think it's going well. The team has been really supportive, and I've been able to implement some of my ideas. It feels empowering. Good, he said, his eyes locking onto hers with unwavering intensity. You deserve to feel that way, Emma. Remember, your past doesn't define you. You have the power to shape your future. She took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling in her heart. I know, but sometimes I still feel those memories creeping back in. It's hard to shake off the feeling of being less than. Like I'm still that girl who wasn't worthy of love. Jake stepped closer, his expression earnest. You are not that girl anymore. You fought to get where you are, and you've done it on your own terms. I'll always be here to support you, but you need to confront your past. We can't let it hold you back. Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his encouragement. You're right. I need to face it. I can't let it control me anymore. A flicker of determination ignited within her, fueled by Jake's unwavering belief in her. As the days passed, Emma found herself grappling with the memories of her childhood, the dark corners of her mind that she had tried to avoid. Each recollection was like a ghost, haunting her during moments of quiet reflection. The laughter of her adoptive siblings, the scornful glances from her parents, the countless times she had been made to feel small. But with each day in her new life, she began to see those memories through a different lens, a source of strength rather than shame. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the sky, Emma sat in the living room of Jake's penthouse, her heart racing. The tranquility of the moment was abruptly shattered when the doorbell rang. She glanced at Jake, who was lounging on the couch, engrossed in a book. Do you want me to get it? He asked, looking up. Sure, she replied, curious about who could be visiting at this hour. As she opened the door, her breath caught her throat. A plain white envelope lay on the doormat, unaddressed. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. The absence of a return address piqued her curiosity. What is it? Jake asked, joining her at the door, his brow furrowing in concern. I'm not sure. It's just an envelope, she said, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and intrigue. Open it, he urged gently, his tone encouraging. Emma took a deep breath and ripped the envelope open. Inside, she found a single sheet of paper, the handwriting neat but unfamiliar. Dear Emma, *, you deserve to know the truth about your past. Your adoptive family has secrets, dark ones. They are not who they claim to be. Their wealth is stained with illegal activities that you must uncover. You are stronger than you know, and it's time to take back your power. *, a friend. Emma's heart raced as she read the words again, her mind spinning with the implications. Jake, look at this, she said, her voice trembling slightly as she handed him the letter. Jake read it carefully, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. This is serious. Do you think it's credible? I don't know, but it feels real. I've always known there was something off about them. They never treated me like family. It was always about appearances. Jake placed the letter down, his eyes narrowing in thought. If there's any truth to this, we need to investigate. You deserve to know what they've been hiding. We can't let them control your narrative anymore. Emma nodded, her pulse quickening. The idea of uncovering the truth excited her, but it also terrified her. What if the secrets were worse than she imagined? What if it's dangerous? Jake reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. We'll face it together. You're not alone in this. I promise. With newfound resolve, Emma felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins. The shadows of her past no longer seemed so daunting when she stood next to Jake, who had become her anchor in the tumultuous sea of her emotions. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. "I want to know the truth, no matter what it takes." They spent the next few days gathering information, piecing together the fragments of Emma's past. They dug into her adoptive family's financial records, unearthing discrepancies that hinted at something sinister. Late nights were spent in Jake's office, the glow of the computer screen illuminating their focused faces as they sifted through documents and emails. "Look at this," Jake said one night, his finger pointing at the screen. "These transactions don't add up. They're funneling money into offshore accounts. This could be huge." Emma's heart raced as she processed the information. What does this mean? Could they be involved in something illegal? Possibly. We need to dig deeper. If we can find a direct link to illegal activities, we might have enough to expose them, Jake explained, his eyes gleaming with determination. As they continued their investigation, Emma felt a growing sense of purpose. The more she learned, the more she realized that her adoptive family was built on lies and deception. Each revelation was a step toward reclaiming the power they had taken from her. One evening, as they sat together in the office, Emma leaned back in her chair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "I can't believe how far we've come. It feels like I'm finally taking control of my life." Jake smiled at her, pride radiating from him. "You've always had that power, Emma. You just needed to find it. And now, you're a force to be reckoned with." She looked at him, warmth filling her chest. "I couldn't have done this without you, Jake. Your support means everything to me." He reached across the desk, his fingers brushing against hers. "We're in this together. Always." In that moment, Emma realized that the journey ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer afraid. Together, they would confront the darkness of her past, and she would emerge stronger than ever. With the truth in their hands, they were ready to take the fight to her family, to expose their cruelty and reclaim her life. The evening air was thick with anticipation as Emma stood in the elegantly decorated ballroom of her adoptive family's mansion. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, casting a warm glow on the lavishly adorned tables, each set with fine china and glittering silverware. Guests mingled, their laughter and clinking glasses creating a symphony of merriment that felt like an echo of another world, one that Emma had longed to be a part of but had only ever observed from the edges. Tonight, however, she was not just an invisible servant. She was a woman armed with a purpose, ready to unveil the truth that had haunted her for far too long. Emma's heart raced as she adjusted the elegant dress that Jake had insisted she wear. It was a deep sapphire blue, a stark contrast to the drab colors of her past. She caught a glimpse of herself in a nearby mirror and barely recognized the confident woman staring back. The dress hugged her curves, and her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. With a deep breath, she reminded herself that she was not the scared girl who had once cowered in the shadows of this very house. She was empowered, fueled by love and a fierce desire for justice. As the clock struck 8, Emma spotted her adoptive family across the room. They were the picture of sophistication, laughing and socializing with their high society friends. Her adoptive mother, a striking woman with an icy demeanor, wore a dazzling string of pearls that Emma had long admired, unaware of the dark shadows they concealed. Her adoptive father, a man with a booming laugh that could fill a room, stood beside her, oblivious to the storm brewing in his daughter's heart. "Are you ready?" Jake's voice broke through her thoughts like a gentle breeze. He stood at her side, clad in a tailored suit that accentuated his strong build. His presence was a balm to her frayed nerves. She nodded, gratitude swelling in her chest. He reached out, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "Remember, you're stronger than you think. I'm right here with you." Emma smiled, drawing strength from his unwavering support. "Thank you for believing in me, Jake. I couldn't do this without you." As the evening unfolded, Emma felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The plan was simple, yet monumental. During her adoptive family's toast, she would seize the opportunity to share her story and expose the truth. The thought sent a shiver of fear through her, but she pressed on, determined to reclaim her narrative. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emma's adoptive father boomed, raising his glass. "Tonight, we celebrate family, love, and the bonds that unite us." Cheers erupted, and Emma's heart pounded in her chest. This was her moment. She glanced at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Gathering her courage, Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around her. "If I may have everyone's attention for just a moment," she began, her heart racing. The room fell silent, the laughter fading as curious eyes turned her way. Emma felt the weight of their gazes, but she pressed on, her voice growing stronger. "I want to share my story. The story of a girl who was lost in the shadows of this very house." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and her adoptive family's smiles faltered. Emma continued, her words flowing like a river breaking free from a dam. "For years, I was treated as little more than a servant, an unwanted burden. I endured cruelty and humiliation at the hands of those who were supposed to love me. But tonight, I stand before you not as a victim, but as a survivor." Her adoptive mother's face turned a shade of crimson, disbelief etched across her features. "Emma, what are you doing?" she hissed, trying to regain control over the narrative. Emma ignored her mother's attempt to silence her and pressed forward, revealing the evidence she had gathered: photographs, documents, and testimonies from others who had suffered under their roof. "This is not just my story. It's a testament to the pain inflicted by those in power. I have the proof of the illegal activities that have allowed this family to thrive at the expense of others. The truth is darker than you can imagine." The room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered in shock, their faces a mix of horror and fascination. Some looked toward her adoptive parents, their expressions shifting from amusement to disbelief. Emma's heart raced as she caught sight of Jake standing at the edge of the crowd, his expression one of pride and unwavering support. "Emma, stop this at once," her adoptive father shouted, his voice thick with anger. "You're making a fool of yourself." "No, father. I'm reclaiming my voice," Emma projected, her voice ringing with conviction. "For too long, I allowed fear to silence me. No more. I will not be a pawn in this charade any longer." As she continued to lay bare the truth, Emma could feel the power surging within her. The guests who had once looked at her with indifference were now captivated by her bravery. She could see them shifting uncomfortably, the weight of her revelations settling heavily in the air. "Emma, you don't understand what you're doing," her mother pleaded, desperation lacing her words. "We've given you everything." "Everything," Emma echoed, her voice rising above the din. "You've given me a life of servitude and pain. You've robbed me of my dignity. But tonight I take it back." The tension in the room escalated as whispers of disbelief grew louder. Emma could see her adoptive parents grasping at straws, trying to salvage their reputation. The facade they had built for so long was crumbling before her eyes, and it felt like sweet, sweet justice. "Emma, you're making a mistake," her father said, his voice low and dangerous. You'll regret this. But Emma stood firm, her resolve unshakable. I won't regret standing up for myself. I won't let fear dictate my life any longer. You may have thought you could control me, but the truth is my weapon. As the crowd began to murmur among themselves, Emma felt a surge of adrenaline. She glanced at Jake, who nodded, his eyes filled with pride. In that moment, she knew she was no longer alone. She had the strength of her own convictions, the love of the man who had always seen her, and the courage to face whatever came next. With each word she spoke, the truth clawed its way to the surface. And as the evening progressed, the atmosphere shifted. The weight of her adoptive family's past pressed down on them, leaving them vulnerable and exposed. Emma felt a thrill of empowerment as she watched the tide turn. The very people who had once belittled her now trapped in the web of their own deceit. The chaos that erupted felt surreal. Emma could see the panic in her adoptive mother's eyes as she tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. The truth had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. Emma's heart raced as she realized the power she held in her hands. She was no longer a victim. She was a force to be reckoned with. As the evening drew to a close, Emma knew she had changed the course of her life forever. The echoes of her past no longer haunted her. They had transformed into a rallying cry for justice. And as she looked around the room, she felt a deep sense of relief. The truth had finally been unveiled, and with it came the promise of a new beginning. The air was thick with tension as Emma stood at the edge of the living room, her heart racing in rhythm with the chaos unfolding before her. The triumphant moment she had envisioned for years had arrived, but it felt surreal. Her adoptive parents, once seated on their thrones of arrogance, now stood handcuffed, their faces pale and twisted with disbelief. Emma's heart was a battleground of emotions. Satisfaction mingled with deep sorrow as she watched the police officers escort her parents out of the estate. The lavish decorations and opulent furnishings that had once symbolized their power now felt like a gilded cage, a prison of pain she had long endured. "Emma," Jake whispered, his voice a soothing balm against the turmoil within her. He stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her, pulling her into a warm embrace. "You did it. You're free now." She leaned into him, feeling the strength emanating from his presence. "I never thought it would end like this," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears brimmed in her eyes, reflecting the mixed emotions roiling in her chest. The weight of years spent in silence, pain, and servitude was finally lifting, but the scars remained. "You did everything you needed to do," Jake replied gently, tilting her chin up to meet his gaze. "This is your moment. You deserve to feel proud." "But at what cost?" she countered, her brow furrowing. "They're still my parents, even after everything they did." Jake's expression softened, and he brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "They chose their path, Emma. They brought this upon themselves. You were just a child trying to survive." As the police vehicle pulled away, Emma felt a mix of relief and guilt wash over her. Despite their cruelty, they were still the only family she had ever known. The memories of their laughter, however twisted, mingled with the harsh reality of her childhood, leaving her feeling adrift between two worlds. "Let's go outside," Jake suggested, sensing her turmoil. "We need some fresh air." He led her through the grand entrance, stepping into the vast garden that sprawled behind the estate. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over everything, a stark contrast to the darkness that had lingered in her life for so long. As they settled onto a bench surrounded by blooming flowers, Emma leaned back, letting out a shaky breath. "I can't believe it's finally over," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I would never escape." "You are so much stronger than you realize," Jake said, his eyes locked onto hers with unwavering intensity. "This is just the beginning. Now you can reclaim your life." She looked down at her hands, the fingers trembling slightly. "What if I don't know how? What if I'm still broken inside?" "You're not broken," he insisted, reaching out to grasp her hands in his. "You're healing, and you have me by your side. We can face whatever comes next together." His words ignited a flicker of hope within her, a small flame amidst the ashes of her past. "Together," she echoed, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I like the sound of that." Just then, as if the universe was signaling a new chapter, Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart skipping a beat as she saw the name of an attorney she recognized from the estate's legal team. "Who is it?" Jake asked, noticing her sudden shift in expression. It's my lawyer," Emma replied, her voice tinged with confusion. "What could they want?" She swiped her finger across the screen, opening the message. As she read the words, her breath caught in her throat. "What is it?" Jake pressed, concern etched on his face. "It says, I've inherited the estate," she stammered, her mind racing. "My adoptive family's estate. And they want to discuss turning it into a foundation for abused children." Jake's eyes widened in disbelief. "Emma, that's incredible. You can transform this place into something beautiful, something that helps others who have suffered like you." "But how? They were the ones who caused the pain. How can I take something so tainted and turn it into good?" Emma felt the weight of her past pressing down on her once more, threatening to extinguish the flicker of hope Jake had ignited. "You can do it because you understand the pain," Jake replied, his voice steady and reassuring. "You've lived it. You can create a safe haven for children who need it. This estate can become a symbol of hope and healing, rather than cruelty." Emma's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and excitement. The thought of transforming the very place that had once been a prison into a sanctuary was daunting, but it also felt like a calling. "You really think I can do this?" "I know you can," he said, squeezing her hands. "You've already faced your past and emerged stronger. This is just one more step toward your future, and I'll be with you every step of the way." She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Thank you, Jake, for believing in me, for being my anchor. And thank you for trusting me with your heart," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "You have the power to change lives, Emma. Don't underestimate what you can achieve." With renewed determination, Emma stood up, her heart racing with the possibilities ahead. "Let's do it. Let's turn this estate into a foundation. Let's make sure no child has to go through what I did." Jake stood beside her, pride radiating from his every pore. "I'll help you every step of the way. Together, we'll create something beautiful from the ashes of your past." As they walked back toward the estate, Emma felt a sense of purpose beginning to fill the void that had once consumed her. The shadows of her past were fading, replaced by the light of hope and the promise of a brighter future. She was ready to rise from the ashes, not just for herself, but for every child who had ever felt invisible, just as she once had. In that moment, Emma understood that her journey was just beginning. She had the power to rewrite her story, to turn pain into purpose, and she was determined to make every moment count. With Jake by her side, they would not only reclaim her legacy, but also build a future filled with love, compassion, and resilience. Together, they would create a sanctuary where every child could feel seen, heard, and valued, just as she had always longed to be.